Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our professional development session today. This is just going to be a quick overview of some things we're going to be talking about, right? So, first things first, we'd like you to take a couple of minutes to get with your interdisciplinary PLC groups, right? We've worked with these groups before. This is just a way to talk to some colleagues that you may not normally interact with, right? So, math, history, world language, something of that nature where it's not the same content, but we're still practicing the same practice. So just take a couple minutes to get with the group, and the Google Sheet is on the board. The first thing we're going to do now that we're in our groups is I've sent you all an intro survey. I've also sent you this PowerPoint presentation. So if you want to, the link to the survey is down below. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes. It's going to talk a little bit about practice, a little bit about different approaches to education, and it's just kind of a nice pulse what our goals are for the year, right? I know we've already started, right? I know this is our professional development day for October, and we're kind of a couple of months into the game, but just kind of where are we working towards, what are we working towards next year, right? And kind of what direction is our building heading into. So take a couple minutes, tackle that survey, and then we will go from there. All right, so again, now that you've kind of wrapped up with your survey, a couple of you still may be working, right? We're going to recap a little bit from our last PLC meeting, right? How has the year been for you guys, right? Take a couple minutes to discuss with your peers, some highs, some lows, right? Have you made any adjustments? Are you teaching something new? So how has your year been? And then really let's specify some groups, right? Some diverse learners, because that's where we're going to be headed with our discussion today and moving forward, right? Our goal as we talk about practice and content and curriculum is going to be really to focus on our diverse learners. And when we say that, we mean groups like ELL students, students with 504s, IEPs, economically disadvantaged students. I know sometimes maybe that group gets kind of forgotten about. And we're going to discuss this as a team, right? Some successes and some areas of growth. All right, so that's going to be our goal today and moving forward. So why this goal, right? So here's just a little data point, and I have added more links down below you can take a look at if you so choose to. It's our state performance report, right? So that was from the last couple of years, and we really see here that students in those ELL groups, in those disabled students, those are your 504s, IEPs, right? They're really struggling, especially post-pandemic, and we're trying to get those students back on board, right? So what redirections do we need to take to assure that those students are closing those academic gaps and everybody, right, is getting better? A high tide raises all boats, right? So this isn't just for these students, but you can use it every day in every class. So that's what we're going to be working on today. All right, so if you have any questions, right, we can talk about it as a staff real quick. All right, but if not, we are going to move on. All right, so one thing, right? So our strategies is to introduce kind of new pedagogy, which is a nice fancy word for teaching. And right, the goal is to not to totally reinvent the wheel here, but just to introduce some ways that you can, right, help your students. And one of those practices is called high leverage practices. These are specifically student disabilities, IEP 504s, maybe students that are challenged physically, like those with cerebral palsy, but it is applicable. And we're going to talk more about these ideas in just a sec, but the gist of it is to, establish boundaries and expectations, right, for students. And again, I've supplied a supplemental link for you if you wish to explore this as we go over this, right, work amongst your peers. Right, we'll talk all about that. But this is just one practice. We'll talk about another one in a minute. But it's just kind of a good way to take a different look at the classroom. So here's some examples, right? Practice and communicating with families. Right, set a timeline. If you have a student that's maybe struggling or doing really well, right? Set up talking points with parents. You don't have to meet with them for lunch, right? You don't have to become best friends with them, but just having that phone call or that email once every 2 weeks could really establish that rapport and then have an understanding, right? When we talk about maybe ELL students, some of these parents may be brand new to our neighborhood, right? To our country even. So maybe they don't know the understandings. They don't have the expectations. They don't have the experience. So establishing that. Another thing we can do is model content and class expectations. Students have, we're in high school here, students may have 10 to 12 different teachers, different classrooms, right? What do you want your classroom to look like, right? Every teacher is different, and we're going to talk about that as well. But you need to identify clear and tangible expectations, right? So if a student makes a mess in a room, right, or doesn't participate and you really want them, right, try to promote those activities, right, as we move forward. Right, our next group, so what I want you to do is work with your group, take a couple of minutes. I've given you links there for some resources for HLP, all right? And I want you to come up with 1 or 2 practices that you may already be doing that involves HLP. You may even not know it. So take a couple minutes, think about it, all right, and then we'll talk about it as a group. Okay, so now that we've talked about it, now that we have looked at this, just know that I'm not making this up. I'm not getting a bonus check because I said the word HLP a dozen times, okay? But here are just, and again, you have access to this, you can take a look if you like, but here are just a couple of examples, right, of how HLPs are effective in the classroom, right, especially with our diverse learner groups, right? Talking about special ed, talking about backgrounds, cultures, different elements of a classroom that maybe we don't always take into mind as we look forward, right? But making those connections and establishing those bridges can help us be better teachers and have better classrooms, better peer-to-peer relationships. So it's definitely a step in the right direction. Another practice, project-based learning, right? Sometimes, right, the traditional brick-and-mortar classroom of worksheets and videos, right, in PowerPoint, it's beyond us, right? We have all these abilities and access points to be better, all right? So what I've done right now for you, a little similar approach from last time, right? Giving you another link. There are 7 really elements of a really good project-based learning. All right. The link is there for you to follow with your group. But I want you to discuss, right, 1 element and why do you think it's the most important, right? Obviously, they're all important, but why do you think that 1 element is important, right? Take 5 to 10 minutes to talk about it with your group or maybe 1 or 2 people in your group. All right. And then we will discuss it as a staff. All right. So we're going to practice this a little bit. You can turn almost any lesson into a project, right? Or at least elements of project-based learning. So I've given you a scenario here, okay, where this teacher is doing some kind of practice, right? See if you can, from the link before, right, or the link on the slide before, take a couple minutes, right? See if you can infuse elements. And again, the beauty of this is it doesn't have to be in 1 class. You can stretch it over multiple classes. So see if you and your peers can really take this as a new approach. Same content, same result, right? Possibly similar assessment, but it's a different approach to the game. All right, here's application number 2, kind of more of the same, right? How can we make this better? How can we make this more engaging? How can we make this more hands-on? So again, same thing, about 5 minutes with your peers, and we'll go from there. All right, so again, this is not just me saying these things, right? I'm not here to kill time. Your time is valuable, but here's just some more examples of some research, right? This has been studied. You can look it up yourself. I've given you the information if you so desire, but this applies to all students, right? The second one talks specifically about math and science, somewhere where we're struggling. So this would be a really good way to kind of approach education in a new way. All right, so thank you for joining. I hope the information was informative. You can always go back to these links, to this information, to this discussion, right, as we move forward. Before we leave, okay, there is a survey I've sent to you all, right, similar to your intro survey. There is an outro survey that I've sent to you all. So please take a look at it. Take 10 minutes to finish that up as we move forward, just so that we can plan our next PD accordingly, right, and our next group PLC accordingly, right? This is a constant evolving nature, all right, and your feedback is extremely valuable. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.